Hello, Cardinals, and welcome to our next installment of Beloved. That ain't her mouth. Anybody who didn't know her, maybe somebody who just got a glimpse of her through the peephole at the restaurant, might think it was hers, but Paul D knew better. Oh well, a little something around the forehead, a quietness that kind of reminded you of her. But there was no way you could take that for her mouth, and he said so. Told Stampede, who was watching him carefully. I don't know, man. Don't look like it to me. I know Seth's mouth, and this ain't it. He smoothed the clipping with his fingers and peered at it, not at all disturbed. From the solemn air with which Stamp had unfolded the paper, the tenderness in the old man's fingers as he stroked its creases and flattened it out, first on his knees and then on the split top of the piling, Paul D knew that it ought to mess him up, that whatever was written on it should shake him. Pigs were crying in the chute. All day, Paul D, Stampede, and 20 more had pushed and prodded them from canal to shore to chute to slaughterhouse. Although, as grain farmers moved west, St. Louis and Chicago now ate up a lot of the business. Cincinnati was still pig port of the minds of Ohioans. Its main job was to receive, slaughter, and ship up the river the hogs the Northerners did not want to live without. For a month or so in the winter, any stray man had work, if he could breathe the stench of offal and stand up for 12 hours, skills in which Paul D was admirably trained. A little pig shit, rinsed from every place he could touch, remained on his boots, and he was conscious of as he stood there with a light smile of scorn curling his lips. Usually he left his boots in the shed and put his walking shoes on along with his day clothes in the corner before he went home. A route that took him smack dab through the middle of a cemetery as old as sky, rife with the agitation of dead Miami, no longer content to rest in the mounds that covered them. Over their heads walked a strange people. Through their earth pillows roads were cut, wells and houses nudged them out of eternal rest. Outraged more by their folly in believing land was holy than by the disturbances of their peace, they growled on the banks of Licking River, sighed in the trees of Catherine Street, and rode the wind above the pig yards. Paul D heard them, but he stayed on because all in all it wasn't a bad job, especially in winter when Cincinnati reassumed its status of slaughter and riverboat capital. The craving for pork was growing into a mania in every city in the country. Pig farmers were cashing in, providing they could raise enough and get them sold farther and farther away. And the Germans, who flooded southern Ohio, brought the developed swine cooking to its highest form. Pig boats jammed the Ohio River, and their captains hollering at one another over the grunts of the stock was as common a water sound as that of the ducks flying over their heads. Sheep, cows, and fowl, too, floated up and down that river. And all a Negro had to do was show up, and there was work. Poking, killing, cutting, skinning, case packing, and saving offal. 100 yards from the crying pigs, the two men stood behind a shed on Western Row, and it was clear why Stampede had been eyeing Paul D this last week of work, why he paused when the evening shift came on to let Paul D's movements catch up to his own. He had made up his mind to show him this piece of newspaper, with a picture drawing of a woman who favored Setha, except that was not her mouth. Nothing like it. Paul D slid the clipping out from under Stamp's palm. The print meant nothing to him, so he didn't even glance at it. He simply looked at the face, shaking his head no. No. At the mouth, you see. And no at whatever it was those black scratches said, and no to whatever it was Stampede wanted him to know. Because there was no way in hell a black face could appear in a newspaper if the story was about something anybody wanted to hear. A whip of fear broke through the heart chambers as soon as you saw a Negro's face in the paper, since the face was not there because the person had a healthy baby or outrun a street mob. No, it was there because the person had been killed or maimed or caught or burned or jailed or whipped or evicted or stomped or raped or cheated, since that could hardly qualify as news in a newspaper. It would have to be something out of the ordinary, something white people would find interesting, truly different, worth a few minutes of teeth-sucking, if not gasps. And it must have been hard to find news about Negroes worth the breath catch of a white citizen in Cincinnati. So who was this woman with a mouth that was not Setha, but whose eyes were almost as calm as hers, whose head was turned on her neck in the manner he loved so well it watered his eyes to see it? And he said so. This ain't her mouth. I know her mouth, and this ain't it. Before Stampede could speak, he said it, and even while he spoke, Paul D said it again. Oh, he heard all the old man was saying, but the more he heard, the stranger the lips and the drawing became. Stamp started with the party, the one baby Suggs gave, but stopped and backed up a bit to tell about the berries, where they were and what was in the earth that made them grow like that. They open to the sun, but not the birds, 'cause snakes down in there and the birds know it. So they just grow fat and sweet with nobody to bother 'em 'cept me, because nobody go in that piece of water but me, and ain't too many legs willing to glide down that bank to get them 'em. Me neither. But I was willing that day. Somehow or another I was willing, and they whipped me, I'm telling you, tore me up. But I filled 2 buckets anyhow, and I took 'em over to Baby Suggs's house. It was on from then on. Such a cooking you never see no more. We baked, fried, and stewed everything God put down here. Everybody came. Everybody stuffed. Cooked so much there wasn't a stick of kindling left for the next day, and I volunteered to do it. The next morning I come over like I promised to do it. But this ain't her mouth, Paul D said. This ain't it at all. Stampede looked at him. He was going to tell him how restless Baby Suggs was that morning, how she had a listening way about her, how she kept looking down past the corn to the stream so much that he looked too. In between axe swings, he watched where Baby was watching, which is why they both missed it. They were looking the wrong way, toward water, and all the while it was coming down the road. 4, riding close together, bunched up like, and righteous. He was going to tell them that because he thought it was important, why he and Baby Suggs both missed it, and about the party, too, because that explained why nobody ran on ahead, why nobody sent a fleet-footed son to cut across the field as soon as they saw the 4 horses in town hitched for watering while the riders asked questions. Not Ella, not John, not anybody ran down or to Bluestone Road to say some new white folks with the look just rode in. The righteous look that every Negro learned to recognize along with his mam's tit. Like a flag hoisted, this righteousness telegraphed and announced the faggots, the whip, the fist, the lie, long before it went public. Nobody warned them, and he'd always believed it wasn't the exhaustion from a long day's gorging that dulled them, but some other thing, like meanness, that let them stand aside or not pay attention or tell themselves that somebody else was probably bearing the news already to the house on Bluestone Road, where a pretty woman had been living for almost a month, young and deaf with 4 children, one of which she delivered herself the day before she got there, and who now had a full benefit of Baby Suggs's bounty and her big old heart. Maybe they just wanted to know if Baby really was special, blessed in some way that they were not. He was going to tell him that, but Paul D was laughing, saying, no way. A little semblance round the forehead, maybe, but this ain't her mouth. So Stampede did not tell him how she flew, snatching up her children like a hawk on the wing, how her face beaked, how her hands worked like claws, how she collected them every which way, one on her shoulder, one under her arm, one by the hand. The other shouted forward into the woodshed, filled with just sunlight and shavings now, because there wasn't any wood. The party had used it all, which is why he was chopping some. Nothing was in that shed, he knew, having been in there early that morning. Nothing but sunlight. Sunlight, shavings, a shovel. The axe he himself took out. Nothing else within there except the shovel. And, of course, the saw. "You're forgetting I knew her before," Paul D was saying, "back in Kentucky when she was a girl. I didn't just make her acquaintance a few months ago. I've been knowing her a long time, and I can tell you for sure that this ain't her mouth. May look like it, but it ain't." So Stampede didn't say it all. Instead, he took a breath and leaned toward the mouth that was not hers and slowly read out the words Paul D couldn't. And when he finished, Paul D said with a vigor fresher than the first time, "I'm sorry, Stamp. It's a mistake somewhere, 'cause that ain't her mouth." Stamp looked into Paul D's eyes, and the sweet conviction in them almost made him wonder if it had happened at all, 18 years ago. That while he and Baby Suggs were looking the wrong way, a pretty little slave girl had recognized a hat and split to the woodshed to kill her children.